The Galactic Empire reeled in shock as the once primitive humans unveiled their monstrous creation, a planet-sized dreadnought that blotted out the stars. For centuries, the Talaxian overlords had subjugated Earth, exploiting its people and plundering its resources. Secure in their delusion of superiority over the lowly humans they viewed as little more than chattel. But the downtrodden species had toiled in secret, marshaling their genius and resolve to forge a weapon that would shatter the chains of oppression. Led by the indomitable Dr. Joshua Freeman, clandestine teams of scientists and engineers labored in hidden bases, their blood and sweat transmuted into technologies far surpassing any the galaxy had witnessed. Now the veil has been lifted on the fruits of their covert labors, a war machine of unrivaled magnitude, armed with advanced weaponry, impenetrable defenses, and systems of unparalleled sophistication. As the Dreadnought powers up its immense engines, its crew steels themselves for the battles ahead, knowing they carry the fate of their entire species. For Freeman and his multinational crew aboard the Liberator, as they christen their ship, failure is not an option. To fall now would mean consigning humanity to eternal servitude, or worse, extinction at the hands of vengeful alien masters. They must stand tall in humanity's darkest hour, wielding the might to break their shackles and claim humanity's place among the stars. And so the die is cast, the stage set for a confrontation that will reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. The once dismissive Talaxian leadership scrambles to muster a defense, while clinging desperately to their delusions of superiority, even as the specter of their hubris made manifest looms before them. The future of two species, one ascendant, one decadent, will soon be decided in the crucible of war. In the opulent war room of the Talaxian palace, Supreme Commander Murlock's voice echoes off the gilded walls as he outlines the dire situation. The atmosphere crackles with tension as the gathered military leaders process the implications of the human dreadnought's existence. Grand Admiral Zorg slams his fist on the polished table, his eyes ablaze with dedication. "We must strike hard and fast," he growls. "Every moment we delay, the humans grow bolder, their perseverance stronger. We cannot allow this affront to our dominance to stand." General Krell leans back in his chair, a smirk playing across his angular features. "You overestimate these primitives, Zorg," he drawls. "They are little more than savages playing at being conquerors. Our fleet will crush them like the insects they are." As the debate rages, Rada slips from the war room, her mind already spinning with plans for the infiltration of the human vessel. She strides through the palace corridors, her footsteps purposeful, until she reaches the chambers of her most trusted agent. Zara looks up as Rada enters, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "I assume you have a mission for me?" she says, her voice cool and controlled. Rada nods, a predatory smile curving her lips. "Indeed. You are to infiltrate the human dreadnought, uncover its secrets, and bring about its destruction from within. The fate of our empire rests on your success." On Earth, Malcolm Reeves moves through the shadows of the human resistance's underground network. He speaks in hushed tones to his fellow rebels, his words igniting the embers of hope that have long lain dormant in their hearts. "The time has come," he whispers fiercely. "With the Dreadnought as our spearhead, we will drive the Talaxians from our world and reclaim our destiny among the stars." Aboard the Liberator, Dr. Joshua Freeman stares out at the vast expanse of space, his heart made with drive. The weight of humanity's future presses down upon him, but he refuses to buckle under the pressure. He turns to his crew, his voice steady and commanding. "We have a long road ahead of us," he says. "The Talaxians will not relinquish their grip on our species easily, but we have the power to shatter our chains, to rise up and claim our rightful place in the galaxy, and that is precisely what we intend to do." As the Liberator's engines surge to life, propelling the mighty vessel towards its fateful confrontation with the Talaxian fleet, the pieces of the cosmic chessboard begin to move. The human resistance prepares to rise, the Talaxian war machine mobilizes, and the crew of the Liberator girds itself for the battles to come. The future hangs in the balance, poised on the razor's edge between liberation and annihilation. And in this moment, as the Dreadnought charts its course through the stars. The fate of two species will be forever altered by the choices made and the actions taken in the days ahead. As the Liberator surges through the void, its crew steels themselves for the inevitable confrontation with the Talaxian fleet. On the bridge, Dr. Joshua Freeman studies the holographic display of the Kraxan system, his brow furrowed in concentration. The strategic choke point looms before them, a cosmic bottleneck jam packed with enemy ships. Captain Thorne's flagship, the Invictus, is leading the assault, Lieutenant Commander Amelia Novak reports, her fingers flying across her console. They're deploying hundreds of warships to intercept us. Freeman nods, his fists tight with drive. "Let them come," he says, his voice steady. "We'll show them what this primitive species is truly capable of." As the two fleets close in, the Liberator's immense size becomes apparent, dwarfing the Talaxian vessels like a behemoth among minnows. The human Dreadnought's hull, a masterpiece of advanced engineering, shimmers with an iridescent sheen, its surface pulsing with nearly unleashed power. The first salvo from the Talaxian ships streaks across the void, a barrage of plasma bolts and missile fire that hammers against the Liberator's shields. The Dreadnought shudders under the impact, but its defenses hold firm, absorbing the brunt of the assault. Freeman's eyes narrow as he watches the tactical display. "Charge the primary cannon," he orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Let's show them what we're made of." Deep within the bowels of the Liberator, the primary cannon hums to life, its immense barrel glowing with an eerie blue light. The weapon, a marvel of human ingenuity, draws upon the very fabric of space-time itself, harnessing the power of artificial singularities to unleash devastation on an unimaginable scale. With a blinding flash, the cannon fires, a lance of pure energy that scythes through the Talaxian fleet effortlessly. Ships shatter and explode, their hulls crumpling under the onslaught as the Liberator's might is unleashed upon them. Amidst the carnage, Agent Zara and her team of infiltrators slip aboard the Liberator, taking advantage of the chaos to breach the Dreadnought's defenses. Disguised as human crew members, they move through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, planting explosives and gathering intelligence on its weaknesses. Zara's eyes glint with cold persistence as she makes her way towards the command center, her hand resting on the hilt of her concealed blade. She knows that the key to victory lies in striking at the heart of the human resistance, and she will stop at nothing to achieve her goal. On Earth, Malcolm Reeves watches the unfolding battle with a mixture of hope and trepidation. As news of the Liberator's initial victory spreads, he sees an opportunity to strike a blow against the Talaxians. With a few terse commands, he mobilizes his network of resistance cells, ordering coordinated attacks on Talaxian supply lines and communication hubs. The Kraxan system becomes a cauldron of fire and destruction. As the battle rages on, the Liberator and the Talaxian fleet locked in a dance of death. Captain Thorne, realizing that the Invictus is outmatched, makes a fateful decision. With grim dedication, he orders a kamikaze run on the Liberator, hoping to cripple the Dreadnought at the cost of his own ship and crew. The Invictus, its hull ablaze and its weapons spent, hurtles towards the Liberator like a flaming arrow, a final, defiant act of sacrifice. On the bridge of the human ship, Freeman and his crew brace for impact, knowing that even their formidable defenses may not withstand a direct collision with the massive Talaxian flagship. Tension crackles through the air as the two titans of the battlefield hurtle towards each other, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. The outcome of this pivotal moment will determine the course of the war and the future of the galaxy itself. The Invictus bore down on the Liberator, its hull wreathed in flames. On the bridge, Dr. Freeman's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "All power to forward shields," he commanded. "Charge the primary cannon." The Dreadnought's systems hummed to life, energy coursing through its veins. As the Invictus closed the gap, the Liberator's primary cannon erupted with a blinding flash. The beam lanced out, striking the Talaxian flagship with pinpoint precision. In an instant, the Invictus shattered, its debris scattering across the void. "Direct hit," Lieutenant Commander Novak reported, her voice steady. "The Invictus has been neutralized." Freeman nodded, allowing himself a brief moment of satisfaction. "Status report on the Talaxian fleet?" "They're in disarray, sir," Novak replied. "We've broken through their lines." As the bridge crew celebrated their victory, Agent Zara and her team moved swiftly through the Liberators' corridors. They had used the chaos of battle to infiltrate key areas, planting explosives and gathering intelligence. Zara's comm link crackled to life. "We've located Dr. Freeman," her second-in-command whispered. "He's heading to engineering." "Understood," Zara replied, her voice cold. "I'll intercept him. Prepare for extraction." In engineering, Freeman surveyed the damage from the battle. He was about to issue orders when a sharp pain exploded in his skull. As consciousness faded, he caught a glimpse of Zara standing over him, a cruel smile on her face. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the crew discovered their leader's abduction. Security teams mobilized, racing to rescue Freeman. In the ensuing chaos, Zara's team detonated their charges, rocking the Liberator with a series of explosions. On Talax Prime, Supreme Commander Murloc paced before a vast holographic display. The defeat at Kraxon burned in his mind, fueling his rage. "I want every available ship mobilized," he snarled. "We will crush this human upstart once and for all." General Krell stepped forward, his face lined with concern. "Supreme Commander, perhaps we should reconsider—" Murloc silenced him with a glare. "The time for caution is past. Either we destroy this threat now, or we consign our empire to ruin." As the Talaxian war machine surged into motion, Malcolm Reeves coordinated the Resistance's efforts on Earth. Hidden transmitters relayed coded messages, setting off a chain reaction of attacks against Talaxian strongholds. "Strike now," Reeves urged his fellow rebels. "While their forces are focused on the Liberator, we have a chance to break their hold on our world." Across the planet, humans rose up against their oppressors. Supply depots erupted in flames, communication hubs fell silent, and Talaxian patrols found themselves ambushed at every turn. In space, the Liberator limped away from the Kraxon system, its systems crippled by sabotage. Hundreds of Talaxian warships converged on its position, their weapons primed for the kill. Acting Captain Novak gritted her teeth as she assessed their dire situation. "Shields at 30%, she reported. "Main cannon offline. We can't take much more of this." Just as hope seemed lost, new contacts appeared on the sensors. A small fleet of sleek advanced warships dropped out of hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with the same iridescent sheen as the Liberator. "This is Captain Arya Chen of the Earth Defense Force," a voice crackled over the comm. "Looks like you could use a hand." Together, the human ships turned to face the oncoming Talaxian armada. The void erupted with weapons fire as the two fleets clashed, energy beams and missiles crisscrossing the battlefield in a deadly dance. Aboard the Talaxian flagship Dominion, Supreme Commander Murloc watched the battle unfold with growing fury. He had underestimated the humans' resourcefulness, but he refused to accept defeat. "Bring us in closer," he ordered, his eyes fixed on the massive form of the Liberator. "I'll finish this myself." The Dominion surged forward, its weapons blazing. The Liberator answered in kind, both behemoths unleashing their full arsenals against each other. Explosions blossomed across their hulls as shields flickered and failed under the onslaught. On the Liberator's bridge, Novak clung to her chair as the ship shuddered beneath her. "Hull breaches on decks 5 through 8, an officer reported. "We can't take much more of this." But even as the words left his mouth, a decisive blow struck the Dominion. Its main reactor went critical, forcing Murloc and his crew to abandon ship. As the Talaxian commander's escape pods streaked away from the battlefield, the humans allowed themselves a moment of hard-won victory. But their celebrate was short-lived, for the Liberator still bore the scars of sabotage and battle, and somewhere within its vast hull, Dr. Freeman remained a prisoner of Agent Zara. The war for humanity's future was a long way to go. The Liberator's engines thrummed as it set course for Talax Prime, the heart of the alien empire. On the bridge, Dr. Freeman studied holographic projections of the heavily fortified system, his mind racing with tactical possibilities. "We have one shot at this," he said, addressing his senior officers. "Our victory over the Dominion has given us an opening, but the Talaxians will be expecting us." Captain Arya Chen nodded grimly. "My ships will run interference, drawing their fire while the Liberator moves into position. As the human fleet approached Talax Prime, chaos erupted across the galaxy. Malcolm Reeves' voice crackled over encrypted channels, coordinating simultaneous strikes on Talaxian holdings. Supply depots exploded, communication relays went dark, and garrison forces found themselves under siege. On a dozen worlds, human resistance fighters emerged from hiding. They struck with precision, years of pent-up rage fueling their assault. Talaxian cruisers, caught off guard, scrambled to respond as their command structure crumbled. Supreme Commander Murloc, his face twisted with fury, barked orders from a makeshift command post. "Crush them!" he snarled, pounding his fist on a tactical display. "I want every available soldier deployed. Burn their strongholds to ash!" Talaxian dropships descended on human-controlled sectors, disgorging waves of heavily armed troops. The resistance fought back fiercely, turning city streets into kill zones and mining approach vectors. The air filled with the acrid smell of plasma fire and burning rubble. As the Empire's attention focused on quelling the widespread insurrection, a sleek stealth shuttle slipped through Talax Prime's defensive grid. Agent Zara, her features obscured by an advanced holographic disguise, strode purposefully through the capital's command center. Using stolen credentials and a silver tongue, she navigated security checkpoints with ease. In a secluded data hub, Zara's fingers flew across alien interfaces, siphoning critical intelligence. A triumphant glint appeared in her eyes as she uncovered the Holy Grail, activation codes for the planet's defense grid. "Jackpot," she whispered, transmitting the data to the approaching Liberator. Aboard the human Dreadnought, alarms blared as the codes came through. Dr. Freeman's eyes widened as he realized the implications. "This changes everything," he said, his voice tight with barely suppressed excitement. "Prepare for orbital insertion. We're taking the fight to them." The Liberator's primary cannon hummed to life, targeting key nodes in Talax Prime's defensive network. With each precisely aimed shot, huge sections of the planet's energy shields flickered and died. Panic spread through Talaxian command as they realized their homeworld lay exposed. Even as the orbital defenses crumbled, a small fleet of human assault craft detached from the Liberator's launch bays. Led by the grizzled Captain Ramirez, the strike force cut through the atmosphere like avenging angels. Talaxian anti-aircraft fire erupted from the ground, filling the sky with deadly energy pulses. Ramirez's pilots weaved and juked, their ship's advanced stealth systems giving them a crucial edge. They touched down just outside the sprawling Imperial Palace, disgorging squads of elite human soldiers. "Move fast, hit hard," Ramirez growled over the comm as his team fanned out. They encountered fierce resistance, exchanging fire with Murloc's fanatically loyal bodyguards. Slowly but steadily, the humans pushed forward, their advanced weaponry and superior tactics giving them the advantage. Inside the palace, Murloc raged impotently as reports of the human advance flooded in. He turned to flee, only to find himself face-to-face with Ramirez and a squad of heavily armed troops. "Supreme Commander," Ramirez said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "I believe you have an appointment on the Liberator." As news of Murloc's capture spread, the Talaxian war machine began to fracture. Ambitious underlings saw opportunities for advancement, while others sought to distance themselves from the regime's failures. Across a dozen star systems, Talaxian ships powered down their weapons, their crews unwilling to die for a lost cause. But even as Dr. Freeman prepared to negotiate the terms of surrender, a new threat emerged. General Krell, his eyes burning with zealous fervor, rallied the Empire's remaining loyalists. "The Supreme Commander was weak," Krell's voice boomed across Talaxian communication channels. "I will lead us to victory against the human vermin at any expense." As the Liberator hung in orbit above Talax Prime, Freeman watched warily as a new Talaxian battle group assembled at the system's edge. The war, it seemed, was a long way to go. The Liberator's bridge hummed with tension as Dr. Freeman faced the holographic projection of General Krell. The Talaxian's eyes blazed with fanatical fervor, his scaled skin flushed a deep crimson. "Your offer is rejected, human," Krell spat. The Talaxian Empire will never bow to inferior species. Freeman's teeth clenched. Then you leave us no choice, General. The blood of your people will be on your hands. As the transmission cut off, Freeman turned to his command staff. Initiate Operation Sundering. Target all known shipyards and weapons facilities. Across a dozen star systems, human vessels dropped out of hyperspace. The Liberator's sister ships, Defiant, Intrepid, and Vengeance, led the assault, their primary cannons unleashing searing lances of energy. Talaxian orbital platforms crumbled under the barrage, while precision strikes reduced sprawling industrial complexes to molten slag. On Talax Prime, Murloc watched from his holding cell as his empire burned. You're making a mistake, he growled at the human guards. Krell is a fanatic. He'll see your worlds reduced to ash before he surrenders. Meanwhile, in the depths of Talaxian space, Agent Zara slipped aboard Krell's flagship. Her lithe form moved silently through maintenance shafts, bypassing security protocols with ease. In the vessel's command center, she approached General Krell, her posture deferential. Supreme Commander, she murmured, I bring vital intelligence on the human Dreadnought. Krell's eyes narrowed. Speak quickly, Agent. Our time grows short. As Zara outlined the Liberator's weaknesses, alarm klaxons blared throughout the ship. Captain Ramirez and his strike team had breached the outer hull, carving a path of destruction towards the bridge. Plasma bolts filled the air as Talaxian defenders engaged the human commandos. Ramirez ducked behind a fallen bulkhead, his armor scorched and smoking. Push forward, he roared, hurling a photon grenade into the enemy position. The explosion rocked the corridor, and Ramirez's team surged ahead. They were meters from the bridge when Zara appeared, a sleek disruptor pistol in her hand. For the glory of Talax, she whispered, squeezing the trigger. Ramirez's second-in-command crumpled, a smoking hole in his chest. The humans returned fire, but Zara was already retreating, buying precious seconds for Krell to escape. As the strike team breached the bridge, they found only corpses and destroyed consoles. Ramirez snarled in frustration, keying his comlink. Target escaped. Repeat, Krell is in the wind. Back on the Liberator, Dr. Freeman received the news with grim resignation. He turned to the tactical display, watching as the combined human armada steadily pushed deeper into Talaxian territory. We've come too far to stop now, Freeman said, his voice resolute. Prep the phasing cannon. It's time to end this. The Liberator's experimental weapon hummed to life, drawing power from the ship's massive reactor core. As Krell's remaining forces rallied for a final stand, Freeman gave the order to fire. A beam of scintillating energy lanced out, passing through the Talaxian vessels as if they were made of smoke. In its wake, ships simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered to the cosmic winds. Across 100 worlds, Talaxian military commanders watched in horror as their mightiest warships vanished in the blink of an eye. One by one, they began transmitting surrender codes. In his hidden command bunker, General Krell raged impotently at the holographic displays. His eyes wild with desperation, he turned to his remaining advisors. Prepare the doomsday device, he snarled. If we cannot rule the galaxy, we will unmake it. As Krell's finger hovered over the activation switch, a shadow detached itself from the wall behind him. Captain Ramirez's voice was cold as he pressed his pistol against the Talaxian skull. I don't think so, General. It's over. I don't think so, General. It's over. Krell's eyes widened as he slowly raised his hands. Ramirez disarmed the Talaxian leader, securing him with energy cuffs. As they marched towards the waiting shuttle, the general's shoulders slumped in defeat. Aboard the Liberator, Dr. Freeman watched the incoming transmission with a mix of relief and trepidation. The flickering hologram showed Talaxian commanders across 100 worlds laying down their arms. The war that had consumed humanity for so long was finally at an end. Months passed. The cavernous assembly hall on Earth's rebuilt capital hummed with activity as delegates from every human world gathered. Dr. Freeman stood at the podium, his voice carrying across the chamber. Today we establish the Terran Republic. Our worlds, once subjugated, now stand united. As applause echoed through the hall, Freeman's eyes met those of Supreme Commander Murlock. The Talaxian sat in the gallery, flanked by guards, his scales dulled by captivity. He would spend his life aboard the Liberator, a living reminder of humanity's triumph. But victory brought new challenges. On the outer colonies, unrest simmered. Talaxian insurgents, unwilling to accept human rule, struck from the shadows. Freeman pored over reports of bombing attacks and sabotage, his brow furrowed with concern. A priority message flashed across his screen. "Sir," his aide reported, "we've identified the leader of the largest rebel cell. It's Zora, Agent Zara's sister." Freeman's lips pursed. He remembered Zara's betrayal all too well. Now her sister sought to continue her work, rallying Talaxian dissidents to her cause. On the bridge of the Liberator, Captain Marcus pounded his fist on the tactical display. "Another human outpost hit," he growled. "We need to make an example of these terrorists." Freeman's hologram flickered to life. "Caution, Marcus. Heavy-handed tactics will only breed more resentment." "With all due respect, sir," Marcus retorted, "your moderation is costing lives." Their argument was cut short by a priority alert. A massive armada had appeared at the edge of Republic space. The Shavran Collective, a loose alliance of mercenaries and warlords, sensing weakness in the aftermath of the Talaxian defeat. Freeman's voice was grim as he addressed the Republic's War Council. "We face threats on multiple fronts. Zora's insurgents within, and now the Shavran at our borders." Reports flooded in of Shavran raids on outlying colonies. Republic fleets scrambled to respond, only to find the enemy vanished, leaving devastation in their wake. Then came the news that chilled Freeman to his core. Zora's forces had allied with the Shavran warlord Krazar. Their combined fleet lay siege to New Terra, a major human world. The Liberator's engines thrummed as it led the counterattack. Energy beams lanced between capital ships as fighters dueled in the space between. On the planet's surface, human militia fought desperately to hold off waves of Talaxian shock troops and Shavran berserkers. Captain Marcus, leading a wing of destroyers, broke through the enemy line. His ships rained fire on Talaxian positions, heedless of civilian casualties. "For every human they killed," he snarled, "we'll take 10 of theirs." As the battle raged, a priority transmission cut through the chaos. Freeman's eyes widened as he read the message. Ilara, a powerful Talaxian governess, offered an alliance. Her forces, combined with the Republic's, might turn the tide against both the insurgents and the Shavran threat. Freeman's mind raced. Could he trust a Talaxian after all they'd endured? But as reports of Shavran atrocities flooded in, he realized he might have no choice. The galaxy's landscape was shifting, and humanity's survival might depend on forging unexpected alliances in the face of a greater threat. Dr. Freeman's fingers hovered over the holographic interface, his mind racing. The offer from Ilara, a powerful Talaxian governess, blinked insistently on the screen. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the decision that could reshape the galaxy. "Open a secure channel to Ilara," he ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. The Talaxian's scaled visage materialized before him, her eyes glinting with a mix of hope and wariness. "Dr. Freeman," she said, inclining her head, "have you considered my proposal?" Freeman met her gaze unflinchingly. "I have, Governess. The Republic accepts your offer of alliance." As the words left his mouth, Freeman felt the weight of history bearing down upon him. Centuries of conflict between their species, countless lives lost on both sides. All of it hung in the balance of this fragile accord. The combined human-Talaxian armada dropped out of hyperspace above Gorvath Prime, a strategic nexus coveted by the Shavran warlords. The Liberator's bridge hummed with tension as Freeman surveyed the enemy fleet arrayed before them. "All ships, engage at will," he commanded, his voice carrying across the Allied frequency. Space erupted in a fury of energy beams and missile salvos. Republic cruisers traded broadsides with Shavran dreadnoughts, while Ilara's nimble Talaxian squadrons darted between enemy formations, disrupting their cohesion. Aboard his destroyer, Captain Marcus gritted his teeth. "This is taking too long," he growled. Without warning, he broke formation, leading his wing on a reckless charge towards the enemy's center. "Marcus, fall back!" Freeman's voice crackled over the comm. "You're leaving our flank exposed." But it was too late. Shavron's ships pounced on the opportunity, tearing into Marcus's overextended squadron. Freeman watched in horror as human vessels were reduced to superheated debris. Just as the tide seemed to turn against them, the Liberator's main cannon powered up. A blinding lance of energy lashed out, spearing through the Shavran flagship. Khazar's vessel disintegrated in a spectacular explosion, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. With their leader gone, the Shavran offensive crumbled. But even as the last enemy ships fled or surrendered, reports flooded in of renewed insurgent attacks on Republic worlds. Lieutenant Kalen stood before a holographic map, studying the patterns of Zora's bombing campaigns. Her team of Black Ops specialists hung on her every word as she outlined their next strike. "We've tracked Zora to Tyrannus 4, Kalen explained, her eyes hard. "This ends now." The mission started smoothly. Kalen's team infiltrated the insurgent stronghold with practiced efficiency, but as they closed in on their target, alarms blared throughout the complex. Zora's voice echoed through hidden speakers, dripping with contempt. "Did you really think it would be so easy?" Kalen's eyes widened in realization. "Fall back!" she screamed. "It's a trap!" The explosion ripped through the facility, claiming the lives of most of Kalen's squad. As she dragged herself from the rubble, the bitter taste of failure filled her mouth. Back on the Liberator, Freeman received the news of Kalen's disastrous raid with a heavy heart. Admiral Telek, a grizzled Talaxian veteran, approached him with barely concealed concern. "Doctor," Telek rumbled, "our alliance balances on a knife's edge. Without a decisive victory, it may not survive." Freeman nodded grimly. "You're right, Admiral. It's time we took the fight to them." The combined might of the human-Talaxian alliance bore down on the last Shavran strongholds. Battles raged across multiple star systems as Freeman's audacious gambit unfolded. On the bridge of the Liberator, Freeman watched as the final Shavran warlord's ship was vaporized by a barrage of Talaxian plasma torpedoes. A cheer went up from both human and Talaxian crew members. But their celebration was short-lived. As Freeman and Ilara prepared to address their victorious forces, chaos erupted. Explosions tore through the command center, filling the air with acrid smoke and screams of pain. Through the haze, Freeman saw Ilara sprawled on the deck, her scales scorched, but her chest still rising and falling. He crawled towards her, his ears ringing from the blast. "Doctor," she rasped, grasping his hand. What happened?" Freeman's teeth gritted as he surveyed the carnage around them. Bodies of both humans and Talaxians lay strewn about, including the still form of Admiral Telek. "Zora!" he spat, helping Ilara to her feet. This was her endgame. As medical teams rushed in and damage reports flooded the comms, Freeman's mind raced. The Shavran threat was neutralized, but at a terrible cost. Now, with their leadership decimated and trust between allies shaken, he faced his greatest challenge yet, holding together the fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve. As the smoke cleared in the devastated command center, Freeman helped Ilara to her feet. The acrid smell of burned circuitry and flesh hung in the air. Medics rushed to tend to the wounded, their frantic activity a stark contrast to the eerie silence that had fallen over the bridge. "Status report," Freeman croaked, his throat raw from the smoke. A junior officer, her uniform torn and bloodied, approached. "Sir, we've lost contact with multiple sectors. Admiral Telek he didn't make it." Freeman's face hardened. He turned to Ilara, who was receiving treatment for her burns. "We need to address our forces now, before panic sets in." But even as they prepared to broadcast, another crisis erupted. Captain Marcus's face appeared on the main view screen, his eyes blazing with terrifying fury. "This is what comes of trusting Talaxians," he roared. "Freeman's misguided alliance has brought us nothing but death and betrayal." Across the fleet, Marcus's words found receptive ears. Ships began breaking formation, turning their weapons on former allies. The fragile peace Freeman had worked so hard to build was unraveling before his eyes. On the planet below, Lieutenant Kalen sifted through the wreckage of Zora's hidden base. Her team had arrived too late to prevent the attack, but amid the rubble they found something unexpected. A datapad containing encrypted communications. "Sir," Kalen reported, her voice tight with urgency, "we've uncovered evidence implicating a Talaxian scientist named Vendra. It appears she's been manipulating our operatives, possibly through some form of brainwashing." Freeman's mind raced. This information could be the key to salvaging the Alliance, or it could be the spark that ignited all-out war. Ilara, her scales still singed from the attack, made a fateful decision. "Allow Kalen to apprehend Vendra," she said, her voice hoarse but resolute. "I will provide all intelligence we have on Talaxian separatist groups that may have collaborated with Zora." The revelation sent shockwaves through both human and Talaxian ranks. Ilara's loyalists fractured, with moderates rallying behind her, while hardliners threw their support to Marcus's growing insurrection. Aboard the Liberator, chaos reigned. A renegade Talaxian battle group, seizing on the confusion, breached the ship's compromised defenses. Plasma bolts sizzled through corridors as boarders clashed with the crew. "We can't hold them!" a security officer shouted over the din of battle. Freeman realized the terrible truth. The Liberator, long a symbol of humanity's resilience, was lost. "Initiate emergency protocols," he ordered, his voice heavy with regret. "All personnel to escape pods." As the Liberator's hull breached around them, Freeman and a core group of loyalists fled to an allied world. From there, they watched in horror as the galaxy they had fought to unite descended into civil war. Kraxon, a grizzled Talaxian commander loyal to Ilara, assumed control of what remained of the Allied fleet. His weathered face appeared on secure channels across human and Talaxian space. "This madness ends now," he growled. "Marcus and his ilk will answer for their treachery." The decisive battle unfolded over Talax Prime, homeworld of the Talaxian people. Marcus's Dreadnought, jam-packed with weaponry, faced off against Kraxon's flagship. Energy beams lashed between the massive vessels as smaller craft dueled in the space between. On the bridge of his ship, Marcus's eyes gleamed with fanatical intensity. "For Earth!" he roared, ordering his helmsman to ram Kraxon's vessel. The two flagships collided in a cataclysmic explosion that seemed to tear the very fabric of space. The shock wave rippled outward, devastating entire continents on the planet below. But the destruction had far greater consequences than anyone could have imagined. Deep within subspace, an ancient race stirred. The Primordials, silent overseers of galactic affairs for millennia. In an instant, the battling fleets vanished. Freeman, Ilara, Marcus, and other key leaders found themselves transported to a vast, otherworldly chamber. Before them stood beings of pure energy, their forms shifting and pulsing with unimaginable power. "Enough!" a chorus of voices resonated in their minds. "Your petty conflicts threaten the very stability of this galaxy." The Primordials decreed an immediate armistice, their will brooking no argument. They laid out a vision for a new galactic concord, one that would unite humans and Talaxians as true equals. As the leaders were returned to their respective worlds, the weight of what had transpired settled upon them. The Liberator, salvaged and repaired, became the flagship of a new joint defense fleet. Freeman stood on the bridge of the reborn vessel, Ilara at his side. The stars stretched before them, no longer a battlefield but a frontier of possibility. "We've been given a second chance," Freeman said softly. "The question now is, what will we do with it?" The Liberator's bridge hummed with anticipation as Freeman and Ilara stood side by side, gazing out at the assembled fleet. The newly christened flagship of the Galactic Concord gleamed, its sleek lines a testament to the combined ingenuity of human and Talaxian engineers. "A new era begins today," Freeman said softly, his eyes scanning the faces of the gathered dignitaries. Ilara nodded, her scaled hand resting lightly on the polished railing. As Freeman stepped forward to address the crowd, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A cloaked figure pushed through the throng, hood falling back to reveal a face he'd hoped never to see again. Zora's eyes blazed with fanatic intensity. "For purity!" she screamed, her hands clawing at her chest. The world exploded into chaos. The blast knocked Freeman off his feet, slamming him against the bulkhead. Through ringing ears, he heard the staccato of weapons fire and the screams of the wounded. Crackson's voice cut through the din. "Secure the perimeter. Don't let them reach the command deck." Freeman struggled to his feet, his vision blurring. He saw Ilara sprawled nearby, her scales scorched, but her chest still rising and falling. Relief flooded through him, only to be replaced by ice-cold dread as he registered the sound of approaching footsteps. Zora burst onto the command deck, her clothing torn and bloodied. "This ends now," she snarled, her fingers flying over the weapons console. Freeman lunged for her, but his injuries slowed him. He watched in horror as the phasing cannon powered up, its apocalyptic energy building to critical levels. "Zora, don't do this," he pleaded. "We can still—" The world went white. Freeman felt a searing pain, then nothing at all. Across the Concord, the shockwaves of the attack rippled outward. On a dozen worlds, centuries-old hatreds reignited. Retaliatory strikes flared, threatening to consume all they had built. Lieutenant Kalen stood on the bridge of a battered cruiser, surrounded by shell-shocked crew members. The weight of command settled heavily on his shoulders as reports flooded in from across the sector. "Sir," a young ensign called out, her voice trembling, "we're detecting multiple unauthorized weapons launches in the Talaxian home system." Kalen's eyes sharp. He stared at the tactical display, watching as the carefully woven strands of peace unraveled before his eyes. "All ships, this is Acting Commander Kalen," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Stand down immediately. I repeat, stand down." But even as he spoke, more red indicators flared to life on the display. The embers of civil war, never fully extinguished, threatened to erupt into an inferno. On distant worlds, Captain Marcus rallied his followers. "The dream of unity was always a lie," he thundered to cheering crowds. "Only through strength can we secure our future." The Liberator drifted in space, its once proud hull now scarred and broken. As Kalen gazed upon it through the view screen, he felt the weight of all they had lost. But there was no time for grief. Not yet. "Set course for the Talaxian capital," he ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his heart. "We need to salvage what we can of the Concord before it's too late." The cruiser's engines flared to life, carrying them towards an uncertain future. The stars streaked past, no longer a frontier of possibility, but a minefield of ancient hatreds and fresh wounds. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the dream of unity hung by a thread, awaiting those with the courage to keep it alive.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.